Hi everyone, I'm Carey Pena, and this is a special edition of my podcast, Carey Pena Reports. On this show, we focus on stories of inspiration, hope, and the power of positive change. Right now, I wanted to ask the question, how do we shine the light of hope in times of darkness? And I have two incredible guests who I am happy to welcome to our Inspired Media 360 studios today. David Adame, who is the president and CEO of Chicanos por la Causa. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Jane Turner, who is a retired nurse who grew up in the segregated South and who lived through the civil rights movement. You are also a children's book author and so much more. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing you in the past, and so I wanted to bring you back in today to share your perspective. Thank you for being here, Jane.
Thank you very much.
I want to start with you, and this show, for our viewers, I don't do politics. I try to stay in the center. My focus here is about rising above that to try to bring us together. So with that in mind, Jane, since you grew up in the segregated South, I just wanted to ask for your feeling. How are you feeling right now?
I am feeling hopeful even in the midst of everything that's going on, because my faith in God has helped me through my problems and trials, and so much is going on now, and I just want to let people know that they can look to God to give them strength, that through prayer, meditation, and reading the Word, they can find strength. And no one has all the answers, but we can look to a God that will help us if we ask Him.
You were the only African American in your entire town in Missouri, you said.
My age.
Your age.
My age.
And so
yes.
you certainly dealt with some very difficult circumstances
Yes.
growing up.
Yes, I did. Very many challenging things from my family, as an individual, and there were things like when the schools got integrated, no one explained why it was being done, but that it was going to be done, and then we had to deal with the aftermath of that decision, among other things. The community was small. We may have had about 12 black families in the little small town, and we had our black community, the church, the school, and yet we were surrounded by whites with their church and everything. But we got along, and we knew what was expected, and so that's part of the story that we'll hear today.
And David, I want to talk to you about how you're feeling right now. You lead this incredible organization, and in large part, one of your missions is all about equality and diversity and empowering people. How are you feeling today?
Well, I'll start off saying that I'm also a man of faith, but we are an organization that, with the protests going on, we actually got started by doing walkouts of schools because we felt there was some unfair practices going on in the Phoenix Union High School District back in the late 60s during all the civil rights movements. So I have a range of emotions. I have the hope, and that's what I drive my day-to-day thinking, and I'll get more into that later, but there is anger to see what happened to the gentleman Floyd. That was not a pleasant thing to deal with, and to see a new generation of children, my children, to be able to witness something like that, right? It's in some ways I'm taking the positive because it's kind of fired up my own daughters who are young to say, not in an ugly way. Of course they're doing peaceful protests, but we have to take this seriously, but we have to take an approach that is constructive and positive and built upon strategic solutions on how we can address this issue. We can't allow this to continue. All the hard work that's been done, whether it's back in the segregation days or, we work very hard to get to a point where we feel there's opportunity for all, right, what this country is based on. And so we need to continue to push for good solutions, good policy changes that could support, because if we don't do it, we're going to continue to have this now civil unrest. And that's the last thing we want is, bad things happening in our communities. We need to respect one another. We need to understand each other's values. And again, keep that faith in mind to keep us pushing forward, that we're all in this together, that, there's no difference between us all. We're all, together in this country, and we need to come up and work together and respect each other and listen to each other on how we can address the challenge we have, because there's many good things that are out there too, right? So I try to focus most of my attention on the positive things, but you can't ignore the challenges, and that's where the anger, that's where the frustration comes in, and I want to see that change, and the only way we're going to do it is if we're willing to listen to each other, respect each other, and work together.
Jane, that's so well said, and
Yes.
I'm a big believer that we need to try to understand where each of us is coming from. Jane, what do you think we could do right now, given that the temperature is so high and there's so much anger coming from different directions? What do you think we could do to try to take that temperature down?
I think that you have spoken so many good things that we're on one accord with many of the things, trying to understand each other, even if our core values might be different, or our complexion or color might be different, to try to reach one another in kindness and love and consideration, and to listen when someone has a legitimate complaint about what's going on. And it's sad that it's taken a major tragedy, like, for instance, Dr. King's assassination, Kennedy's assassination, and people that fought along the lines and that they received the insults. It's something that you look back, and yet we can't go back. We have to go forward. And so with this new generation, there is a lot of hope. And there have been changes. They've just come in little slow increments along the way. And so that encourages some, but there's so much more that we need to press in. So there is hope for people. With the strong faith that I have, it's helped me through my difficult times. And Mr. Floyd's family were people of faith, and they didn't want retaliation. And I don't condone looting and things like that. So more understanding. And the one thing that impressed me was when the police walked over to where the protesters were and gave them hugs and knelt with them and prayed with them, and just offered, they had to do what they have to do, but they didn't condone what happened. So I think,
well, violence tends to beget violence.
Yes.
We don't want to
Yes.
see any protesters injured.
No.
We don't want to see, of course, any police injured.
That's true.
I mean, to me, it's just on all levels.
Yes.
Right now, some sort of Pandora's box has
Yes.
been unleashed. I was driving the other day, and I have two little children, and they said to me, "Mommy, what does racism mean?" Because I don't raise them in any way to say, "Oh, that person's black, that person's
Yes.
this, that
Yes.
person's that." They didn't even have any concept.
Wow.
And so when I stopped, and that's why I wanted to do this show today,
Yes.
to talk about it, because I really, and perhaps this is naive, some might say, but I thought we were farther along.
Oh, yes.
The country, when you think about it from a world perspective, is not that old, even though we're over 200 years old now, right? But there's still challenges out there when you look at the actual facts of educational attainment, wealth, home ownership. All these are true facts that show communities of color are lagging, right? And again, we just started having civil rights, although you may think 1960s, well, how far long ago?
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago.
Right.
We were all, not you, but I was born by then, right? And it's like, there's still many areas that need attention, need strategies to do that. And also, we need to be, again, I want to emphasize this, listening to each other and being compassionate on what you say.
True.
Not only does violence beget violence, but hard rhetoric
Yes.
sparks even more hatred, sparks more anger, and that could lead. And I don't want to be naive and know that there's agitators and there's other people and some of these, the looting and all these other things that's going on, but the majority of people are there because they do want to make a positive change. But we need to calm that down, and it takes leadership, right, from the President of the United States to local leadership, right. And I want to applaud our Chief Williams, right. I've known Chief Williams, and I knew her husband, the former councilman Cody Williams, for a long time. You're not going to tell me that they don't understand this and they're trying to make changes. But again, there may be bad apples in any scenario, whether it's part of the protesters or within the police department. But we all got to agree that we have to continue to not give up, look for that light of hope, right? Because and we have to be the light for people that can't see
Yes.
it. We have to be the leaders of that, and that's what I'm trying to do, leading one of the largest Latino organizations in the country. That's not only in Arizona, we're in Texas, we're in California, we're in Nevada, we're in New Mexico, and that's the messaging that you see in our social media, right? We started with whether it's Martin Luther King or Cesar Chavez or Gandhi, all the principles of peaceful protest, of helping love people and help them understand and get to the place where they get it, right? And we still have a lot of work to do for your question, and in some cases, sadly, it almost seems like we've come full circle on some things, and everybody has to be the blame for that. Well, again, from the highest level, the President of the United States to the local level, and community leaders like me, we need to work harder to engage our community and make sure they have a voice in what we're doing.
You know, it's interesting because I have a very good friend of mine, and I used to work on the local news here for those who don't live in Phoenix, just to give you some context. And a friend of mine is one of the main anchors. She's African American, and so I texted her. I said, I just want to see how you're doing because this can't be easy. She wrote me back and said, I want you to know how much I appreciate you sending me that text and asking about my mental health. She said, this is not easy. It's not easy on any level. And I thought about that a little bit, and I thought, it is very traumatizing, and especially for you, Ms. Turner. I mean, when I talked to you before, you said living through what you lived through, you really had a form of PTSD.
Yes, true.
Do you feel that you're being re-traumatized right now?
Well, I think I've come a long way in some of the things that's happened, and it took time, it took prayer, it took talking to people about what happened, and for years I couldn't even share some of the things that I went through. And I'd like to share something, if it's okay. In the year 2000, you talked about being shocked. I had the opportunity to get a home. And so I went out and I purchased this home, and it was beautiful. 2-bedroom and everything, and had another adjoining building. And when I had no idea that I would be, in other words, hated for moving in this particular area of town. And so I had to deal with certain things, with people were insulted at my door. And I had to call the police certain times, and even one of the officers said, why did you move here? And I thought, this is the year 2000. Talk about shock. That was a shock. And I appreciate that you let me share. That's just one little incident, but I don't hate anybody. I don't want to see bad things happen to anybody. I want peace and harmony, and that is not too much to ask, because if people will judge people by their character and not the color of their skin, we will be so much further along. And Dr. King's principles that he stood for and led us into were wonderful approach to change. Thank you very much.
Well, I think when you were talking, David, about education, I just wanted to touch on this because we were also supposed to today be joined by an ASU professor. Fortunately, he did get sick, and I'm wishing him well. He made a point to me on the phone when we were speaking about this conversation, and he said we have to empower all socioeconomic communities, and we do that through education. And he said, so that's trade schools or community college, universities. We have to focus on those things because he said what causes frustration and anger is when you don't have hope. And so I know that's a lot of work your organization is doing.
No, absolutely. Again, our vision statement is empowered lives. And it's different for every individual, what that means for them. And then we drive economic and political empowerment is our mission statement. And very basic, but the root of it is that we want to make sure that people can lead towards having the fair chance at the American dream, whatever that is for them, whether it's owning a home, wherever they want to own it, if they can afford it and they've worked for it, or going to college, or whatever it is for them, owning a business. We want to make sure that we're giving that handout, right? If people, again, we're not talking about handouts. I'm not talking about welfare. I'm talking about our organization is built around giving people that hand up. And the core of it, we started by walking out of the schools because at that time, unfortunately, which there's nothing wrong, and there's honor in work, right? But we were being geared towards more vocational stuff. And women, unfortunately, were just saying, you can't be an engineer. You need to be, whatever, right? You can't. And so we had to fight to overcome those things, and that's what we're gonna continue to do. Because again, if you look at the facts of the how far behind communities of color are when it comes to higher education attainment, which leads to how much wealth is built in
And
the
that's
community.
a fact.
That's a fact. Right.
Not even,
I'm not making that up.
Right.
That's just real numbers
Yeah.
that you can get from the census, which,
Yeah.
by the way, that's another way. We need to all be doing our census, right? And we all be needing registering the vote, because we have enough in communities of color. And I'm not saying just to, and I tell people, just make sure I'm clear. I'm not telling all Latinos, you need to vote because we need to vote for Latino elected officials. We need to vote for people who support all communities. And that's what we're talking about, empowerment. And the other fact is that the more educational attainment that an individual has, the more they participate civically, whether that's voting or otherwise volunteering, all these other things. So the foundation of education is key. That's what we're based on. And from programs to helping brain development for children from being in the womb to 5 years old, to Head Start programs, to elementary school support programs, youth programs, we're working on making sure, because that level plays the field, right? And having a fair chance to do that. So scholarship programs and other ways to make sure that that's not a barrier to somebody achieving higher education. So to us, that's a core value of ours, that you have to achieve that higher education, because it's a social determinant that impacts so many positive things for the community in general. The fact is that the communities of color are growing in this country, right? And we're going to be the majority. We've got a majority-minority, which is oxymoron, but if you don't invest in it, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
We're not going to be as competitive as a country anymore. And who's going to pay into the Social Security system for the boomers that are all, I'm the tail end of the boomers, so I want people to pay for my Social Security. So, we need to be making these strategic plans to make sure that our country is competitive and continues to be the strongest nation in the world.
Can you leave the audience with some hopeful words? Because probably, definitely I can't compare to anything you would say.
That's all right.
But you've lived it, and what strikes me about you is you have chosen love over hate.
Thank you very much.
You do not carry an axe to grind. You want people to be happy.
Yes, I do.
And your mom, you told me, is 94 years
Yes,
old.
she is.
She is now deaf and blind.
Yes, she
and
is.
she lives a still beautiful life. And she
Yes.
just got her gazebo that she
Yes,
wanted
she
in
did.
Missouri.
Yes,
That's
thank you.
finding happiness in
Yes,
what
it
could
is.
be darkness.
Yes. She's so challenged in so many ways, but she tries to get through and through the things, and writing books and some of the other things have been so important for her, and having plots and everything. But in what you were saying about being hopeful, it's sad that a tragedy caused the awareness of everyone, that their minds are open now where they weren't before. And though we are a minority, it's going to take a majority to make change. The other thing I want to leave is, yes, I had a very difficult life. If you would see me in the public, you would see a big smile and kindness, and everything would come from me. But there are scars that are deeply embedded in me, and it took a time to get over that. And I had to forgive even myself for some of the mistakes I made. And as I go forward now, I want to think about the family that Mr. Floyd's family and others that have been mistreated or killed, in a bad way. I want to encourage people to trust God, to pray, and to seek help if they need help, but not for violence. I didn't choose that way. Dr. King was a nonviolent person, and the people that were with him had extreme control when the dogs were let loose on them, when the water hoses were let loose on them, and they were beaten and in jail. But you know what? That was yesterday. Now today, as we go forward, there's a new blood, new life coming forth in the young generation to help others and to change the things that are unfair in life. Change has come so slow, but it's changed from the 1950s when I was growing up, and it is different. And yet there are shocking moments that have shocked me, that things are not where they should be. So I want to encourage you. The Lord often leads me to encourage people. I want to encourage you that if you need help, get help. Pray and seek God, and believe that change will come if we go toward that and progress toward it. And I'm very grateful to be here today, and I thank you very much for this opportunity.
I could sit and listen to you all day long. And David, I'll let you close things out for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wow.
Thank you too.
Incredible life. I appreciate being with you here today.
Thank you.
Well, first I want to make sure that my heart and prayers go out to the Floyd family.
Yes.
Nobody should have to endure something like that, and make sure it's clear that what happened was not right.
That's right.
I don't want to mince words with that. It was not right, but it wasn't right. But now we have to be the light.
Yes.
We have to be the light as
Yes.
leaders, as parents, in whatever role you play in your life, because every individual carries many hats.
That's
From
true.
work to your family.
So true.
And we have to be the light and the hope and keep the faith. And as they say in the Bible, since you're the minister, love is the most important thing.
Yes, it is.
And so we have to approach that with the love, right? All communities have experienced some form of horrible experiences.
Yes.
When we did our walkouts, there was examples. There was even a movie made of the LA walkouts called Walkouts in LA, the LA version of it, and police brutality, police spying on the community, and those are the things that need to change in order for us to, how can you build trust if things like that are still happening, or we're not working together to single out agitators. I saw that a man that I respect and was a mentor of mine, Calvin Good, the councilman of the city of Phoenix, a monument of his being spray painted on, right? And I think they ended up finding out that it was an agitator that actually did it, right? Because his poor grandson was like crying, like, how could you deface my grandson? He's an African American leader that was helped make change here, and that's why he's being honored, and you're going to spray paint on his monument. That's not the approach. It's be the light, be the love, work together, and the more people work together, the stronger we're going to be. It's like the strings,
true.
right? The more strings you wrap together, the stronger the bind, and the better chance we have of getting the policy changes. And Chicanos por la Causa is not going to stop. That's why you're around. It's empowering lives, and we're going to do it peacefully, and we're going to respect. But at the same time, we are not going to get on our knees and not do anything about it.
True, very true.
It's not talking about peaceful. It's not talking about being stepped on. Peaceful is being strategic, focused, working together, and if we can respect each other, and again listen to each other, because God bless us with 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should be listening twice as much. That's the way we get it done.
Thank you both so much, David Adame and Jane Turner. I appreciate you both being here. And thanks to all of you for spending a few minutes, for keeping an open mind. And we hope that this conversation will help to inspire you to go out there and listen and try to view what someone else has been through, so we can all hopefully navigate some steps here and make positive change. I'm Carey Pena. You can find this show on our website, inspiredmedia360tv.com, also as a podcast, and our show name is Carey Pena Reports. Thank you so much, and take care.